What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today I am back with huge news about the One Piece trading card game. And when I say huge news, I'm not exaggerating. You know how Edward Newgate is a huge character? That's how huge this news is. Oh, speaking of which, they've restricted that Edward Newgate character. Yeah, let's start there. You see, ladies and gentlemen, there has been a big update in the One Piece TCG this morning, and basically, as of next Friday, they have added free cards to the restricted card list. Now, for the time being, up until today at least, we had known about 2 banned cards. These are banned cards. You cannot put any copies in your deck. That is Moby Dick, the stadium card, the Whitebeard Pirate Stadium card, that if you've got 1 or less life cards, your Edward Newgate and all your characters with Whitebeard Pirates gain 2,000 power, and as a trigger you play it. Basically, that card was way too good. It made Whitebeard Pirates way too powerful, basically allowing you to go down to 1 or 0 life, and then start blocking and countering so you don't lose the game, while all of your characters become super powerful. That was too much, and they banned it. And we saw a ban for Kabaji. Now this is the one from OPO2 that on play, if you've got emoji, draw 2, trash 1. But basically there were a bunch of ways to reuse this, and when combined with the Nami leader, it created a situation where you could end up using this over and over again, drawing a bunch of cards and making Nami, remembering that the hook of Nami is you win by running out of cards in your deck, i.e. drawing a whole bunch. It made it a bit too good, so Kabaji got banned to stop Nami being too good, and Moby Dick got banned to stop the Whitebeard deck being too good. And for a while, nothing happened. Well, now we've got 3 new restricted cards, and let's be perfectly clear, they are coming in to stop Edward Newgate. Edward Newgate, the leader, came around in OPO2, 6,000 power, 6 life, both higher than we would expect, 5 and 5 is standard. And at the end of your turn, you add a card from the top of your life cards to your hand. Yes, it whittles your life down, but you also get card advantage, and then there's ways around it. We'll get to that in a moment. So, what's gone to been restricted? And these cards are restricted, the first of which is Edward Newgate. Very, very important difference. Restricted means you can have 1 copy in your deck, but you can only have 1 copy in your deck. Now this is 9 cost, 10,000 power on play. Your leader gains 2,000 power until the start of your next turn. Bearing in mind, start of your next turn means on your opponent's turn, when they're trying to attack through the leader to take life, you've now got an 8,000 power leader. And then you cannot add life cards to your hand using your own effects during this turn, which is a good thing. Plus Don X2 when attacking you KO one of your opponent's characters with 3,000 power or less. It is a ridiculous card. So what have they said about this? We'll start off with the official explanation and then add as we go from there. When this card is combined with the Edward Newgate leader or the Roanoa Zoro leader, it's another just really good red leader. And actually, just for 1 second here, if we just have a quick look at the Roanoa Zoro leader, do remember it's a 5,000 power leader, but Don X1, all of your characters gain 1,000 power, so that is pretty gosh darn good. The durability of up to 1 of your leader gains 2,000 power until the start of your next turn, and then you cannot add life cards to your hand using your own effects during this turn, afforded players a substantial advantage against their opponent. Furthermore, using this card with cards such as Radical Beam and Guard Point enhances durability even further. Radical Beam as a counter gave 1 of your leaders or characters 2,000 power during the battle, but then if you had 2 or less life, 4,000? And bearing in mind, Newgate starts at 6,000, add 2,000 with the character, add potentially 4,000 with Radical Beam, and you've got a leader with 12,000 power. Your opponent's just not going through that. It means that they're just not being able to take life. Interestingly, that card has also been restricted. We'll get there in a minute. A Guard Point was just a counter that gave you an extra 3,000 power or 1,000 as a trigger. So yeah, basically halfway between when you don't have the second part of Radical Beam coming in or when you do. But either way, it makes your leader super duper powerful, and you've got to attack through the leader to take life, and that was basically just a bit too much. In addition, the introduction of Izzo from OPO3 made it possible to replicate this situation with a high degree of probability. Now, like they said, that is one of the new cards from OPO3. It's a phenomenal card that sees basically, it's basically like a 4 of in every Edward Newgate deck. And one of the reasons is, on play, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal a card with Whitebeard Pirates in and pop it in your hand. So it meant you could find these Whitebeard Pirate cards more easily and get this combo rolling much, much quicker. Due to the above, this card has a high usage and win rate in tournaments, and we have determined that it impedes the offensive and defensive tactics that are central to the enjoyment of the One Piece card game. As a result, we have decided to designate this card as a restricted card, up to 1 copy per deck. 2 important notes. This restriction may be lifted upon the release of OPO4. This restriction is only enacted in regions using the English language version. Now, it's a video I've not had a chance to upload yet, but I'm going to show you a video soon explaining to you why there is a very good chance Edward Newgate might be the best deck in OPO4. OPO2, yes. OPO3, oh my word, yes. OPO4, it wasn't arguable, it now is. Putting this down to 1 copy massively, massively nerfs this deck. But that's not the only one. I mentioned Radical Beam a moment ago and what that does with an extra 2,000 or 4,000 power to your leader, or 1,000 as a trigger. And yeah, I mean, basically, well, let's read the explanation, but it's basically what I just said. When combined with Edward Newgate or Rowan Ozoro and built into a deck with Guard Point, this card greatly improved the deck's overall durability despite having a cost of 1. In addition, achieving the condition, if you have 2 or less life cards, becomes easier when used with the above cards. Again, Newgate takes his life as you go through the game, so you get down to 2 or less pretty quickly if you want to. Due to the above, this card has a high usage and win rate in tournaments, and we have determined that it impedes the offensive and defensive tactics that are central to the enjoyment of the One Piece card game. As a result, we have decided to designate this card as a restricted card, up to 1 copy per deck. Please note that this restriction may be lifted upon the release of OPO4, and again, this is only for the English language, which I find very interesting because it is doing very well in Japan at the moment. It wasn't, well, it was doing fine, okay? But with OPO4, up until recently, the Edward Newgate deck was decent. But certainly there was a strong argument that the better deck in the OPO format was Rebecca. The early big tournaments over in Japan were showing us that it was Rebecca that was the best deck, and I made a video about that the other day. There is a potential sea change happening here where Edward Newgate might be retaking over as the best deck. So I've got my eye on this one. As it stands at the moment, it's only in the English language, and they've already said they are thinking about lifting it for OPO4. But if we see a couple more tournaments going the way the last few have in Japan, I could see this being extended to Japan rather than being lifted when OPO4 drops. Yes, it is this way at the moment, English only. We'll have a look at OPO4. But I'm telling you, if you look at the results that have been coming out of Japan recently, there is significant reason to think this could be extended rather than lifted. And the last one is Marco, who is a Whitebeard pirate, and again, it's all about the Whitebeard deck. 4 cost, 5,000 power, and blocker. And on KO, you can trash a card of a type including Whitebeard pirates. And if you have 2 or less life cards, play from your trash rested. Remember how I said that one of the things this deck can do really nicely is go down to a few life cards, activate all these cool extra skills on the cards I've shown you, but then start using things like blocker? How about having what is essentially a perpetual blocker? Yeah, that's Marco. When this card was combined with Edward Newgate or Rowan Ozoro, its on-KO effect served a key function in boosting the deck's durability, because it's a blocker which keeps coming back, and combining it with cards such as Radical Beam and Guard Point. We've already talked about them. They massively increase your leader's durability, and essentially the deal here is those cards make your leader big and buff, so it's really hard to get through. Your opponent, goes all out, combos up, gets one really big attack through Edward Newgate, who, like we've seen, could legit have like 12,000 power. Your opponent finally gets an attack big enough to go through, and you're like, ha, block with Marco. Ha, bring Marco back. So not only do you have this giant leader that your opponent really struggles to take out, you can then block and bring your blocker right back, so your opponent has to have multiple attacks that can get through a potentially 12,000 power lit, and it's just not happening. And that's why this deck has been so gosh darn good. And then again, the introduction of Izzo made it possible to replicate this situation with a higher degree of probability. This is a Whitebeard pirate and hence can be searched out with Izzo. Due to the above, this card has a high usage and win rate in tournaments, and we're determined blah blah blah, we've seen this before. Basically, these three cards combined have made Whitebeard Pirates ridiculous. And it has been very arguably the best deck in OPO2, inarguably the best deck in OPO3, and like I've said, in OPO4, don't think it's taken a downturn. The recent Japanese tournaments have shown that deck is still ridiculous. And look, banning Moby Dick didn't kill the deck. Will the restriction of these three cards kill the deck? It's definitely going to depower the deck. No argument there. But the thing is, we've still got Izzo to search our Whitebeard Pirates out. We've still got Guard Point and, one Radical Beam. We've still got one Marco, bearing in mind it can be searched with Izzo, and it keeps coming back. This is the one that really interests me. It's a card that can keep coming back. So restricted to one, if you can find it early enough in the game, might not be such a big deal. And sure, only having one big Edward Newgate is a bit of a problem, but that is a late game card anyway. You don't need it in the first couple turns. It's a 9 cost. And we've got Izzo that can potentially search it out. I don't think this deck is dead. Certainly, restricting these 3 cards is going to hurt the power of it. I'm not going to sit here and argue it's not. But I also don't think it kills the deck. I think it lowers the power, which, to be fair, is exactly what Bandai are trying to do here. So there we go. I told you this was very big news. I think I can confidently say I've delivered on that promise. But now I want to hear from you guys. How do you feel about these new restrictions? What do you think it does to the power of this deck? Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about One Piece and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wasi Plays.